Bom dia. I'm Cat Kabira. Please pardon my attempt at speaking Portuguese. I do love Portugal and Brazil. So I wanted to share with you why I got into energy work and why I love it. And part of it is that as a child, I was always involved with the energy world. And because I work with kids, I would say that for most of us, this is just an inherent thing of, working with this more subtle, the astral, and working with our imagination and seeing our power of creation, even seeing our ability to cast spells. And that there's almost like a window of time where it's like we have this awareness and then we start to get indoctrinated by school and by society, and then we start to lose that. Or we start to have, traumatic things or scary things or shocking things or unsettling things that happen where we suddenly lose our safety. And so that connection to the subtle, the invisible, the supernatural, that suddenly becomes scary. Because there definitely is a healthy way to navigate these realities. And there's also a way where you can do it where you get a little cray-cray. And part of my work, actually, because I work with you, if you're super sensitive, you might have numbed out from this part of yourself because you're not sure how to handle it, or you're kind of in overwhelm a lot because it's just too much information all the time and you don't know how to handle it. Most people who are sensitive aren't like, I love my sensitivity. And part of my work with you is like, it actually is the best thing ever, because if you can actually start to own what you're picking up on and make choices around that, you're actually going to design, like, you're going to nail it, like, think about it. It's like the difference in music where it's like, the most like, that note, if you just tweak it a little bit, that feels right, where it's like, you just tweak it and it feels so right to the system. So for me, I kind of never lost that, and I always felt very disconnected from regular society because it just didn't seem to add up. And despite the mystery school I went to as a kid and like the psychic development that I did as a kid, and even the medicine man that I worked with, I still lost that because there wasn't a regular way for me to feed it. And I remember even when I first fell into anorexia and I was about 85 pounds and going to a church, revisiting there, like looking for some connection to source and feeling very lost and not satisfied by, I couldn't find anything there. And I went through I've gone through many dark spaces where, I've been suicidal and I'm like, why am I here? And why is life so hard? And I don't even want to be here. I don't care anymore. And just giving up, and letting other people use me. And it really, I think what helped bridge the gap for me in the energy world was actually meditation. And I know that nowadays, it's like when I first started meditating, it just wasn't a thing. It was back in like 96. Obviously, meditation's been happening for thousands of years. But, in terms of like, it's suddenly being like a healing thing and a mindfulness thing, and like business executives use it. Like it, especially at the age of 17, like meditation, no one talks about it for me in my world back then. And so what I found was that when I sat, one, I was able to come home to myself, but two, I started to realize our interconnection with everyone and that we were all God dreaming together. And that just put me in awe. And that suddenly, like, I met that part of us that dies. And death is just another dimension. It's not an ending. It's like a portal. And that, there actually are practices that I'm not going to try to teach you over fucking YouTube, okay. But that you can slide into that dimension, if you're able to surf a certain wave. I'll just leave it there. But, there's a freedom in realizing, like, when we come to terms with our own death and what is really going on? And for me, going back to, the anorexia and the bulimia and the, like, I don't want to be here, basically. And, I just want to take drugs and escape. And to suddenly get into contact with this energy world and to feel it in my body, that became my way home. And what I thought was so beautiful is that I could actually feel like sparkling sensations of my body waking up, of me coming back in, and this awareness of my own pain, and that you can discharge it if you can ride the wave of it. And that my own pain wasn't just mine, that I was carrying my family's pain, that I was carrying generations of pain and the collective pain. And what I think is so beautiful are the practices where you're not forced to have someone tell you what to think or feel, especially those of us who have a history of abuse. To be able to trust ourselves and make decisions for ourselves is part of our work, because we really warp our own brain wiring, perception, in order to function in society. Like, if you were abused, then I would imagine, at least I know this was for me and with the clients I work with who have a similar history. As a child, you couldn't ever imagine that the people around you would actually hurt you, or that there was something inappropriate in their actions. So we end up taking in this idea like, I'm bad, I'm the one who's wrong. And what is really fucked up is that decision that we make ends up like weaving through our entire life. And even if you're doing other work on a mental level, there will still be a subconscious part of you that's like, you step into any situation and your immediate way to deal with other people is, I'm going to put myself down, I'm wrong, I'm bad. And that's how you navigate. So it's really fascinating to get honest with what are those contracts that I made, either in another lifetime, but like as a child, between like 0 and 7, where it's like that actually is what's running my system. And it's not always going to be obvious, especially to us, because we will carefully package what these beliefs are, because we are so terrified of being obliterated, of death, of being rejected, of not being loved. And so we actually are doing our damnedest of like, even in the most fucked up way, how do I actually keep a place on this planet, even though I might be sacrificing myself in the process? So it really is important, and it's I want to be careful to not try to give like a blanket terminology, because everyone is very unique, and we all have very unique nuances of these decisions that we made, and we all need to be held in a very unique and different way as well. So why I'm going on this tirade about this is that there were so many parts of myself that could never be accessed or touched, so many parts of my pain that I just couldn't get in regular practices, even like with things like Reiki, no offense, or acupuncture, even though I think acupuncture is great. It was like, what kind of energy practices could go into like the deep, subtle part, deep into the back end, and really start to understand why we're stuck in the way that we're stuck. And it's been beautiful to actually witness, especially over the past 10 to 20 years, that there are more somatic experiencing, the Barbara Brennan School, certain levels of shamanic work, certain levels of biodynamic craniosacral therapy plus, like that practitioner needs to have some extra stuff in there. There are ways to get in there. And also, how do we, because we don't want to always have it, though our nervous system, we are community tribal based. We do need other people, right? So there is a power in how can I show up and feel good in this community? How do I feel this connection? Because especially if we're more sensitive, we'll tend to hide. We'll tend to be like being with other people isn't fun, and use introversion as kind of like our excuse. How do we actually feel like we can thrive with groups and also know when we need alone time? So I'm not saying that you're meant to do all this alone, but you're also not meant to be dependent all the time on other people. And it's like, how do we start to oscillate? And how do you start to find that when the shit goes down, you actually can still thrive and have your own tools and ways to come back to yourself, and a deep love, a deep self-commitment, a deep inner strength, a deep connection to God and source, because we don't just want our support, other people. The gods are here. Source is here. Like we are part of this ultimate creation. And how do we know our own godness? And that's my invitation to you, that you can feel this connection, this beautiful life source that birthed you and that's going to carry you even when you leave this body. And that our life is not bad news. It's the most magnificent miracle. That's what you get to access. That's what you get to express. And I'm sending you so much love.